And there are all kinds of, so he told me that this whole idea was more of a freedom struggle.
Yeah.
But I really just twisted the title with free to struggle.
Yeah.
You know, in the sense that, you know, is it a struggle, but they are still free while struggling. In the sense that it has, you know, it really shows, you are talking about a freedom, independent, and this and that. And here, a certain different kind of a freedom they are exercising. And are they really free to do that? Or are they really, what sort of a life celebration is happening there? I kept doing many sculptures that time, like even, you know, the woman with the violin, where, you know, very precariously she is being placed and still playing violin. And these were the kind of things, because that was all result of what was happening around my studio, because till the time that studio was built, I was not exposed to that part of life. And till 9 Kirki studio, before making my studio in Chhatarpur, it was still like kind of a space where you connect it with, you know, human in a different kind of sphere of space. You know? And fact, here you are seeing it in a different reality, and really takes to a kind of a different thinking process of. And these faceless, anonymous people were continued for almost a year or two. But I think when you are talking about the recognizable, featured Musui or Mayas, probably was an attempt to give a face to those people.
Okay, yeah. I mean, in fact, there are two things. I mean, the way I look at it from outside, in some sense. I mean, like, your early works were small, but you had thought of them to be part of monumental things. Maybe the conditions were not there to really do such monumental things, but eventually maybe they were mid-scale maquettes for even larger works. And but also one of the things where you're thinking in terms of being part of a built environment. So part of architecture. Some of them would have, I mean, you might have thought of really relating to urban, big, huge scale architecture, and you have thought about that. So this was one thing, and that gradually the figures became more and more organic, more and more human in their kind of thing. They left their reference to architecture in some sense. And also it became, by the time maybe when you built your studio, somehow it began to relate to interior spaces in some sense. But as you said, also there were these abstract things, those little boxes and various other things you built into which people migrated or kind of thing. They're quite interesting in the sense like this whole idea of, I mean, people crowding into spaces, spilling over, falling and making those pyramids out of people. So there were reflections on the urban scene in some way. But then out of that came this Musui Maya thing, I mean, people with a recognizable thing. In some sense, I mean, simple people, I mean, in some sense, but also people extraordinary in terms of the movement and the fluidity of the bodies that came. So, although it probably came out of this, I mean, meditation on the bleak situation around, I think the figures that emerged in these two characters were very extraordinary figures in terms of the lightness. I mean, it's not the pondering bleak situation, but these characterize people who might be blissful, I mean, floating, who kind of, I mean, challenges gravitational, I mean, kind of rules, and seems to be free in that sense. I mean, very lively and also in some sense mischievous little kind of imps, I mean, coming out. So that is some kind of a positive thing, and which is also interesting. One part meditations which are bleak, on the other very lively and something that hopeful in some sense. So these two poles seems to be a thing, along with what I said, that it's not normally sculptors don't go into the narrative possibilities. I mean, it's never done. I mean, it's not a story, but there is a kind of, I mean, opening up or construction of a possible world that's taking place, which I find quite interesting in your work, and that probably led to the ramps later.
See, what was happening was that, you know, like that was the same time in 95 or 94 that I took to doing a series just while working on these human boxes on one side, And then, there was this opportunity for working on some of the sculptures were in a given or studied environment, and they're kind of a grouping of sculptures. And also I was working on one of the occasion, I remember that, there's sculpture based on travel. So that was again a rickshaw puller. And even that time I was just sort of thinking that what could be the best travel. So it's basically again bringing a kind of a human drama within that. So then when I thought of, no, I'm not going to make a rickshaw puller. It's most basically a kind of a rickshaw. And then, you are connecting with kind of a more kind of a choreographed character who really sort of, not with the kind of struggle pulling a kind of a thing, But here, so I thought that was probably one of the time, along with the sight oriented. Then I saw that it was probably again, what was happening? It was Musi who came into being, and the kind of the portrait that I have it in my studio, sort of kind of a newly recollected. You can't say that. It was with me forever. The portrait that I did in Santiniketan. But then I was trying to associate with by being with that, and the kind of smile, that Musi had, and I wanted a kind of a character that brings certain intimacy even to the viewer, even while making. Because you see, if it's a kind of, you see many people on the road, when someone gives a smile, you somehow respond to that. In a way, in the sense, because that brings you close to the person. So I think that part of that element was working initially to really create, this choreographed characters. And in terms, and then finding a kind of the body to that was not connected to the Musi that I knew or anything. And there, like when you say about, say, it could be connected to the imp stories or, and especially when I was placing it next to the palm trees. That was a site in France with the palm trees. So easily I could connect it to the kind of Musi becoming, one of those characters, very airbound, and they are that kind of a light that they could walk on leaves and twigs and things like that. And I did 6 sculptures together on a concrete, not concrete, I would say stone pillars on the top. Because the stones were also even taken from India, and then placed them on the top like kind of caps, and I think that was the time this series of Musi Mayas, that time there was no Maya basically much of it. It was, and this is one side in Delhi I was making this rickshaw puller, and the other side I was making this. So even the rickshaw puller, I wouldn't say that it was the puller, it was a kind of someone, really celebrating the journey, with maybe a bird as a memory, seated on the rickshaw, and here you are taking that character into a different space because it is not connected to that reality. It's a different kind of a reality from the memory stories and things like kind of fairy tale kind of stories. And here is something which is extremely realistic. You are a rickshaw puller. So it was a kind of you are doing that simultaneously, and then the series of sculptures of this Musi hosting various icons coming. That if this Musi, like what is so much talked about, that it can host any character. I think that was again taking Musi from Musi to a different space. He could become a devil, the same character could be, and he's so ordinary, and to make him so ordinary, and then with the very character can become an angel, or so then the necessity of the Maya comes only because of the way the whole storytelling that you needed a counterpart that was extremely necessary to integrate that it's not the male or a female, it is just human, and it is undivided. And yet it's 2 halves or 2 fulls of the same character. That then the series of sculptures of this this Musi Maya series in till 1998 or 99. I was working on those.